Here are 3 things you might see in the last 24 hours before death. A common misconception is that we as healthcare workers don't know when someone's going to die or how close they are to death. And with a caveat saying, of course, we don't always know, and sometimes we are definitely wrong, but there are many things that we look for that are pretty obvious signs that someone is getting closer and closer and closer to death. So here are 3 things that I commonly see that will tell me someone is very close to death. So I see this in hospice, of course, because I'm a hospice nurse, but you could see this in other areas. And I'm specifically talking about the last 24 hours. The number one indication that I see that someone is very close to death is changes in breathing. Someone close to death within a few days of death will start having changes in breathing, usually. And when they're getting closer and closer, meaning I think they're going to be dying in the next 24 hours, they will have significant changes in how they are breathing. I actually have specific videos on this channel called Real Life Actively Dying that will show this kind of breathing. It usually will look like long, deep pauses before the next breath. So even sometimes you'll think they are dead, but then they'll suddenly breathe again. It can actually startle the family sometimes. So long pauses between breath, or just breathing fast, and then stop breathing for a long period of time, and then fast. Sometimes it will look like they're gasping for air, which they are not. I can't stress this enough. They are not gasping for air. This is called agonal breathing, and it's basically the last type of breath you see before someone dies. If you see this, you will know that your loved one is likely to die within the next 24 hours. Trigger warning, this is an example of what end-of-life breathing will look like. So why is this important? It's important because first, many family members want to know this. People don't think that they will, but that is one of the number one things I get asked. When is this going to happen? How long is this going to last? It's hard to be with your loved one during this phase. It gives you some sense of control, kind of knowing what to expect. So that's why I think it's important to know the signs and know what to do when you see those signs. So what do? It's a lot of not doing. Unfortunately, which is hard for a lot of people, including me. We want to do to kind of keep our mind busy. Really, this is the time to just be. This is a time to know that let's call our loved ones to say, hey, this is happening and it's happening soon. If you want to see your loved one before they die, you might want to come over. Now, I actually think you should do this before the last 24 hours of death, but if it hasn't been happening and you never know, it can happen quickly. So at least this will give you a sign, hey, this is probably happening soon, so let's call people in who want to be here. Second thing you want to do is still keep them clean and comfortable. So just because they are very, very close to death does not mean you don't want to keep them clean. So we'd still check to see if they're wet, if they've had bowel movements, because they still can. You want to keep them clean and still keep them comfortable, which means just because they are unconscious doesn't mean we should stop all of their medications. If their body was used to getting morphine, liquid morphine every 4 hours, and they had been doing that up until this point, we would want to continue to do that because that's what their body is used to and probably still needs, even though they are actively dying. It is not a time to panic. Many people during this time, of course, it's hard not to feel like you need to do something, feel like this is an emergency, someone needs to help, and of course you can always call hospice. They can help. However, just know that, again, there's not much to do. You just keep being with your loved one, and this is a normal part of death and dying. It is to be expected. And that's why education is so important, because when you're not used to seeing it, when you don't know that it's normal, it can really make you feel panicked. This is the whole point of this video and my channel in general, is to help educate, so during this time you can still be with your loved one and not panic. It is a natural human instinct to feel panic, to feel scared when you see something like this. And please just know that that's normal, right? And it's going to feel uncomfortable. But if you can educate yourself, with this video and learn how to be present in that moment. Know that feeling uncomfortable, feeling a little scared is very normal. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. That doesn't mean you need to do something. It just means you're human and you're having a human reaction. And just being there with your loved one, despite how uncomfortable that feels, is one of the greatest acts of love I think anyone can give to another person. That's why it's so powerful to me as a hospice nurse to witness families doing this. It's beautiful. And again, it may feel uncomfortable, it will feel difficult, but it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. And this is the time to be with them, be present, say all the things you've been wanting to say, and just spend time with them. The last two signs that death is imminent, happening in the next 24 hours, would be terminal secretions, so increased terminal secretions, which is that death rattle that you hear, the gurgling noise with someone's breath. You will most likely hear that the last 24 hours before they die. And if you've already been hearing it, you'll hear it even more. Sometimes it will increase during that time. And the last thing I always say, in the last 24 hours, they will be fully unconscious. They will not be waking up, kind of no matter what you do. They will not be eating and drinking, of course. They'll have their mouth open, their eyes open, but not fixating on you. So they'll have that stare, that death stare, like they're not really home. That's definitely going to be present in those last 24 hours before death. It's so important for families to know that during this time, do not act like your person isn't there. We still believe that hearing is the last sense to go, so speak to them like they can answer you. Like I said before, say all the things you want to say. Don't talk about them like they're not in the room. Talk like they can understand you and could respond, whether they're responding or not. And just to be clear, these are not sequential. These don't have to happen this way. It doesn't always happen this way. People do die suddenly, they die quicker, some linger longer. It does truly depend. So you want to always talk to your healthcare provider about this. This is just a general overview of what we typically see during the last 24 hours of someone's life. If there's anything I want you to take away from this video, it's that you can be present during your loved one's last 24 hours of life. And feeling uncomfortable during that time is normal. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And it's one of the greatest acts of love that you could give yourself and your loved one who's dying.